Hi, this is Richard Edelman, and you're listening to The Trust Makers.
Hi, I'm Amanda Edelman, COO of the Gen Z Lab and Associate Director at Edelman. Joining me today is Julie Gehrki, Walmart's Vice President of Philanthropy. She leads programs focused on economic opportunity, sustainability, local communities, and racial equity. Part of her role includes working with Walmart's 2.1 million employees, one of the world's largest workforces. Today, we will discuss findings from Edelman's latest Trust Barometer special report, Trust at Work, as well as how Julie builds trust in corporate philanthropy. Julie, welcome to the Trust Makers.
Thanks for having me, Amanda. I'm excited to learn alongside you.
Would just love to hear a little bit about yourself. What experience led you to Walmart and really what attracted you to the role in the first place?
It was a surprise to join Walmart. My entire background was in the nonprofit sector, from local community work to international development, and I really thought that would be my future. When Walmart called, I was frankly not even interested in applying at first, and ended up having an amazing interview, met a company that was genuinely interested in driving social and environmental impact, and have now been here 15 years.
Wow. Did your perspective on sort of the values of business change from that initial interview to now? And the reason I ask that question is actually what you're describing really reminds me of some of the data that we've done on Gen Z, where for me, I initially thought that they'd be skeptical of business, but actually they genuinely want to partner with business for change. And we have a stat that says 9 in 10 of them are looking for brands to use their superpower, which is their reach, their scale, their large employee base, to work on the issues that they care most about. So I wonder if any of this perspective sort of resonates with you.
It does. I see that every day, and I love that phrase, their superpower. That's how we think about it at Walmart. Our specific expertise, our specific assets mean we can solve social and environmental problems in unique ways. And we actually think by doing that, it's not just a nice thing to do. We think it builds a stronger business for us. And so working on driving impact in that environment is a huge privilege. And I get to both work with business leaders who are doing that through their line business every day, and then complement it with philanthropy and extend the impact. But we really think those things go together to solve the level of systems problems we're facing in the world.
I see here that one of the main philanthropic goals is to build more caring and connected communities. And given the fact that Walmart exists in so many communities across the world, that seems like a really applicable and appropriate theme. So I'd just love to hear how you think about that. And also, if you've seen any changes in the business with how communities, or sort of the importance of communities, are perceived. Sort of in a macro theme in the Trust Barometer, we have this concept of trust goes local. And so the importance of community and sort of hearing content from your peers, from your broader community has never been more important. So I'm curious as sort of how you're thinking about community as a business, and also if you've seen some of those dynamics or relationships or the importance of community really shift.
We have. I love that phrase, trust goes local. I'm going to use it again. It resonates because part of why we work in this space philanthropically is our business reach. We think our presence in local communities is an asset. 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of a Walmart. And so when you think about the diversity and the real complexity of what communities are facing, that is reflected in our stores. You talked about the 2.1 million associates globally, the 1.6 million in the US. They represent every walk of life. And so often some of what I've seen in your research that's similar is the workplace, the role of the workplace. And so building trust across lines of difference is just a daily experience in our workforce. And I think that's an asset. And really thinking of that as an asset, I think it's a framing we don't see all the time. We often hear about our differences right now as a tough thing to navigate, rather than this amazing asset we have that allows us to reflect our customers, allows us to build trust and humanity across lines of difference. And so the business is doing that, making sure that all associates feel like they belong in our community at Walmart. But then through our philanthropy, we're funding groups that really do build the skills of bridge building and connecting across lines of difference. How do we make that a skill we look for in our leaders? How do we create spaces where people come together and experience the beauty of different points of views, the beauty of different backgrounds, and then really make sure that we have a narrative that is a positive frame? We believe we solve problems better. So, one example, I was with the team from StoryCorps last week. And they, for people who don't know, are amazing at having these facilitated interviews where loved ones come together to put on record those stories that are handed down through our histories and our families. Well, they're taking those same skills of facilitated, really meaningful interviews and bringing them to communities and facilitating them across lines of difference, to putting two people who are very different from each other, who didn't have a previous relationship, and having conversation, not necessarily about what they disagree with, but on their common humanity. And they're seeing just tremendous results of not only increased trust with the person they had an interview with and allowing them to be much more complex and nuanced in their person, but also generalizing that to others so that they start breaking down and recognizing common humanity alongside, yes, we disagree on these things. So I'm really excited about that kind of work.
I realize this is a podcast, so obviously people did not see my jaw absolutely drop when you mentioned that 90% stat. So just to repeat this again, you said that 90% of Americans live within 10-mile distance of Walmart. That is unbelievable. So obviously it has a huge role in so many people's lives in so many local communities. I also love this focus of sort of building bridges. Our theme for the last year of trust has been navigating trust in a polarized world. And for anyone who exists in the world today, this is probably not a shocking through line. And so I'm really curious, honestly, how you're navigating that. And of course, there are so many things that connect people, but there are obviously real differences in beliefs and perspectives. So that is, one thread that I want to pick up on. The other one is if you have any thoughts on sort of the unique role that the workplace and or philanthropy can play in building bridges in a polarized environment. And our data shows that there's a very strong role for the workplace, for example, to play. And intuitively, I would believe that that's also the case for philanthropy.
Sure. And I think they probably relate. So I'm going to steal from another smart person I'm learning from, who I had a chance to talk to. So Ibu Patel, who leads Interfaith America and has done a lot of work, has really devoted his career to thinking about this, has a simple framework on building trust and relationships across lines of difference. And he talks about respect, relate, and cooperate. And I think it makes a ton of sense, which is like, we need to start with a baseline of respect. The more we can build relationship and understanding across lines of difference, the better. But then often the magic is in cooperating to solve big problems. So in his world, he's working with people like Habitat for Humanity and the YMCA through a group called Team Up to build skills of staff members so that they can do this and bring people to really build a house together or these kinds of things, which I think is a great way we deepen our relationships and really build trust that decreases polarization. But when you put that in a context of an employer, Walmart has an incredible purpose. We exist to save people money so they can live better. Each employee, each associate, as we call them, plays an essential role in that. So there is a natural way we are collaborating every day to deliver the mission, deliver the purpose for families who need us, that gives a higher order meaning to our relationships with each other than maybe something that we disagree on. And I think that that is, the more we can bring purpose into our lives, we can help people have this larger frame in which they're solving a problem together, I think often is the basis for some of that trust building.
This actually is related to a very strong theme that we saw broadly in our workplace report, which was that employees, therefore employers, are starting to rethink the meaning of work. And this one really resonated because, as you know, I lead our Gen Z lab. I see this in our data, I see this in our workforce, I see this in our clients' workforce, is that young people are rethinking what the inherent purpose of work is and are sort of questioning it. And I wonder if this is something that you've seen or experienced at all, sort of this reconsideration or shifting in how people are thinking about work and just fundamentally what it means to their lives.
I do. And I think purpose is at the heart of it. We started by talking about my background, which is in the nonprofit sector. And I think there's a natural conception that the nonprofit sector is filled with purpose and the for-profit sector isn't. And I've just found that to be totally untrue. Frankly, in joining Walmart, I joined one of the most purpose-driven places I've ever worked. The connection to our customers, the connection to being with them in tough times and good, adding value to their lives, making their world more convenient is so real and tangible in our work. And literally every person plays a part in it, that I think that's the base. But then when we can do that in a way that allows them to save money to send their kid through college, to save for staycation or vacation, whatever that is the heart of it. But Walmart thinks about it even more as we have a commitment to become a regenerative company. So that's in the how we deliver our purpose. How do we build it in a way that solves social and environmental problems while strengthening our economic proposition? How are we training and investing in our frontline associates so that they have economic mobility and tremendous careers, and making that part of their day job, not kind of a side if you have time, but rather in the core proposition? How are we making sure that when we buy the food we sell, that the specs are in a way that they're sourced with environmental sustainability at the heart of it? And this idea of regeneration is going beyond sustainable. In many ways, sustainable is really thinking about do no harm. Incredibly important, but regeneration is a higher bar. It is actually adding value back to that system. And that's our aspiration as a company. And it's not just my job who has kind of impact as my day job, but it's the job of every associate. We can't fulfill that mission unless everybody is enlisted in the work. And that is a purpose that I think is really inspiring and speaks certainly to Gen Z, but I find it speaks to everybody.
I love that articulation. And I really love what you said as well, with sort of turning the mirror inwards. And that's one of the big points that we say is always right. If you have a position in the world and are sort of preaching to the world, it's table stakes that you are obviously making that position yourself. And it's the right thing to do. It's also the right thing to do as a business. Obviously, you cannot talk the talk if you're not walking the walk. And one of the big points that we say for Gen Z is that 70% of them will always fact check what you say, follow you if you're untruthful. And so it has never been more important, just because this digitally native generation has a forensic ability to get to the truth, again, as we say. I don't know if you have any specific examples or anything like this of ways that you're sort of creating internal pathways of mobility for workers at Walmart.
Sure. I feel so lucky to have inherited a culture where that's been at the heart of it from the beginning. It really has been a place that believes the will, the skill, all the things you learn on the job are valuable. 75% of our field management started as hourly associates. This includes our CEO and the head of Walmart US stores. So it's not just kind of at the mid-level, which is certainly important, but at our most senior level, we have leaders that started as hourly associates with the company. The fastest way to be credible at Walmart is to have had field hourly experience and to have made that such a cultural piece, to say we are frontline focused in everything we do, and we need to listen to those who are at the front lines of serving the customer because they will have the best ideas, is the heart of our culture. And so when you start with that, it's then adding the mechanisms that make that mobility accessible to all. And so we are becoming a skills-based company. We recognize the skills people learn through their day jobs and have designed the jobs in the stores as learning jobs. So they work in teams. Each team has a coach. All of these things that says, like, your actual job is a way we all learn. And we should recognize that learning. We should design for that learning. We cross-train. All of these things are the heart of it. But then for those who want more, we have what we call Walmart Academy. This is both digital training, but also this 200 facilities across the country where we send people, they're co-located with stores so that you can train and see what good looks like at the store, walk from the classroom into the store, look at it, hear from associates who do it well. Those classes come with as much as 21 hours of college credit because of the seriousness with which we take them. And hundreds of thousands of associates have been there. And then for those who want even more, we have a program called Live Better You. This is a free education program. People can pursue short-term credentials, 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees, high school diplomas, all paid for by the company. And so we've created this culture of learning where we want our all of us to be growing, developing skills that lead to advancement. That paired with a culture that believes that experience, not just a college degree or other paths, are the way to advance, means we can have tremendous mobility in the company.
That's absolutely amazing. I know we talked about this before, but I want to bring it up. I've actually been on another end of the Walmart philanthropy relationship, a social enterprise that I used to work for that created pathways of economic mobility for blue collar workers into tech. I was actually the recipient of a good deal of funding from you. And I know that you and we've spoken in the past about this idea of sort of creating pathways of opportunity, particularly for adults, people who don't necessarily have opportunities in their lives to upskill, to pivot. And this leads me back to one of the core findings of our trust report, which is this trust gap between desk or office workers and deskless workers, which basically means it's anyone who works in retail, it's people who are pilots, it's people who really don't have the luxury of working remotely or working at a desk every day. And we just see this enormous trust gap between different groups of workers, particularly executives, and this deskless worker group. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on why this is, and given that you've done such a good job as Walmart, obviously with Walmart Philanthropy as well, in trying to put at the forefront the experience of the majority of your workforce who are deskless workers. If you have any advice or recommendations for other companies, it seems like there's a lot that various companies could learn from you.
Sure. I mean, I think it is deeply cultural and it has to start there. The diversity of our deskless workers is incredible. It's everything from pharmacists and auto mechanics to the cashier you see. If you can think of a job, Walmart probably employs it. And the diversity of career paths we have is really incredible. But at the heart of this is also listening. Our executives are in the store every week. They are having listening sessions and feedback sessions. We have digital tools. We've given over 1 million smartphones to associates so that they can provide direct feedback. And there are pulse surveys. We're getting literally thousands of pieces of feedback from deskless workers a month. That allows us to stay connected and to really know what is on their minds, what we can do better, ideas they have that will help us serve our customers better. And that listening then needs to be put into action. And so it's not just the inputs, which are incredibly important, but then it is showcasing that those inputs convert to decisions. We've had things like our family planning services, everything from maternity leave to fertility benefits came from ideas from the front line. We've recently rolled out mental health training for our leaders who asked for it and said, I need help spotting people who may be facing something that they need help with. And so we've recently trained all our management in supporting mental health and increased our counseling classes. That came from the front line. We're closed on Thanksgiving. We used to be open on Thanksgiving. Our Walmart US CEO got an idea from an associate saying we really should close. So making tangible and really showing that those ideas convert to action, I think is part of trust. If listening looks like a black hole and has a real divide, it's not going to build trust. But when you see that the input is heard and acted upon, it's meaningful.
Absolutely. So you're repeating another one of our trademarked lines: action drives trust. So
I love it.
clearly we're learning from you, you're learning from us. It's all sort of converging is really what I'm hearing. The thing that most stood out to me in that is, as you said, sort of 75% of field staff started as a deskless worker or started in retail, including your CEO. That's unbelievable. And I think that sends such a powerful message to the company of like, there's no divide. Wherever you are in the company, you can get to anywhere else. That's what that message says loud and clear. So 70% of deskless workers say that they'll trust the CEO if the CEO experiences their day-to-day work. So that is incredibly important. And we're actually also already seeing action, not just from Walmart, but from other companies around that. So for example, the CEO of Starbucks very publicly a couple months ago committed to doing 1 day a month of sort of barista shift work because that's the majority of the workforce. And obviously, you can't fully understand the company if you don't understand how people are working at it, if you don't understand people's day to day and customers' day to day. So really going back here, it's not just the right thing to do from an ethical perspective, although it is, because from an ethics perspective, of course, you want to build trust with your workplace. But really, it's the best thing to do from a business perspective. As you've mentioned, there are all these super smart ideas that are coming from the workforce because there are people from various walks of life who represent the super diverse consumer base that you're obviously serving and catering to. At the end of the day, again, it's not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do.
Exactly. And it needs to be done at all levels. I think we've talked a little bit about our executive team, which is in the stores every day. We recognize our associates are likely their biggest number of followers on social media. So you find that they use their social media channels to get direct to associates and hear from them and demonstrate that they're in stores every week. And so that's important. But also, we know that our frontline managers play an important role. All of us, our happiness at work correlates with our relationship with our boss. And that is really important. And so we've invested in training for managers on empathy, on leadership, really saying, yes, you have a tremendously complex job. You're running a very large retail store in your community, but your role as a leader is an essential part of that. And how you show up for your team, listen, communicate clearly, all of these things are part of your day job, and we need to train you to do that. So it really starts there and works its way to the top because the experience has to be consistent for trust to grow.
So I want to introduce one more topic, which is the impact of Gen Z on the workforce. And in broad strokes, I want to hear how you've been feeling that at Walmart and Walmart Philanthropy. But before you answer, I want to highlight a finding that we have, which is that 93% of employees say that they've been influenced by coworkers in their 20s in areas around the workplace. So this is across work-life boundaries, openness to technology, desire for career success. Obviously, this is my area of interest as COO of the Gen Z Lab. So I would be fascinated to hear how you've seen this influence manifest or not in Walmart and Walmart Philanthropies.
I love this. I think that the workplace is filled with incredibly rich intergenerational relationships and really thinking about them in a mutual manner that we're influencing each other. I think beyond kind of traditional mentoring of the person with more experience imparting wisdom, this reciprocal learning, I think, is just so rich to nurture. And we see it all over our company, the value it brings. So, for instance, work life balance. We've been working on scheduling for probably close to a decade. And now our hourly associates have choices between fixed schedules where they can come in on a predictable manner week over week and flexible schedules. Because it's a diverse workforce, phases of life mean I want different things out of my scheduling and work life balance. But putting that control, getting it so that they really are in the driver's seat of how that works at the time of life they're in is one example. Another is really around regeneration. We see that our Gen Z workforce is deeply committed to the environment, to making this happen. And they are often the champions in their stores of reducing waste. Or they're the buyer in bakery who's really thinking about how to get sustainable palm oil into goods you buy. And that can be tremendously powerful in setting an example that puts people and planet in the center of the work, but also drives a strong business and brings along their colleagues. And so it is a gift to be in a workplace where we have associates from probably 16 to 100. And that interaction is just can bring real beauty to the workplace.
I like this phrase that you mentioned, which is intergenerational dynamics. I think that's so applicable and relevant. For example, I'm even already starting to get questions around Generation Alpha, who are 12 and younger. So they're very, very young, and sort of the interplay between them and Gen Z. How are they similar? How are they different? But I think it all goes back to this idea of, how are these generations interacting with each other? What are, again, those intergenerational dynamics? What is minimized? What is amplified? And ultimately, I think the reason that we've gotten so much interest around this topic is for Gen Z specifically, they have such tremendous influence across all generations and the behaviors that businesses care the most about, including workplace dynamics. So they're a really interesting proxy for the way that the workplace is changing. And I get some questions about, are they influencing that? Are they being influenced? And I think for me, the answer is both. But really, they are almost like a canary in the coal mine analogy here for how work is changing. And I think one of the big findings that we have here that is really mirrored by everything you've said is the importance for increased purpose in the workplace. As people reconsider the meaning of work, you need a strong purpose. Why am I here? Why am I showing up every day? I need to care about what I do and care about the role it plays in my life. And then I think the second definition of purpose is sort of more social impact, mission orientation, and that is definitely an area that Gen Z cares deeply about. And again, is really looking, broadly speaking, to partner with brands, with employers, to bring that change that they want to see. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. So Julie, thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise. And as always, to our listeners, thank you for listening to the Trust Makers.
Thank you for tuning into the Trust Makers, an Edelman podcast in partnership with Advertising Week, where we speak with leaders and other trust builders across institutions. See you next time.